That's why it's such a privilege to introduce our next speaker. She is a business builder. She's a fierce advocate for efficiency, accountability, and someone who knows how to shake up a broken system from the inside out. And that's exactly why President Trump asked Linda McMahon to take the reins of the Department of Education, because she is a trailblazer, an entrepreneur, a job creator, one of the few job creators who actually takes a job to get rid of her job. Nevertheless, she's still bringing that same entrepreneurial grit to an institution in dire need of disruption. For too long, the American education system has been adrift, as we just heard, and thank you to Rob Enlow for leading that incredible panel. It's far off course from its original goal. Rather than putting students first, it's turned into a den of bureaucrats and special interest groups, more focused on protecting the system than improving the outcomes. And the loudest voice, the ones leading that charge, teachers' unions. Rather than take the responsibility and address the reasons behind America's academic collapse, they push back against the parents who demand accountability. But change doesn't mean destruction. It means improvement. Programs that serve parents and students will not only remain, they'll get stronger. Student loans, nutritional assistance, and civil rights protections will be transitioned to agencies with the expertise and the resources to manage them more efficiently. This is an opportunity to modernize and strengthen these programs, ensuring they work better for the people who rely on them every day. And that's why President Trump chose Secretary McMahon. She built her own success by focusing on the truth, on results, and eliminating red tape. As the former administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration and now as Secretary of the Department of Education, she brings a sharp, business-first approach to reimagine one of the most challenging, important challenges of our time. She knows what it takes, she knows how to cut through the bureaucracy, and she knows that everything and our children are at stake. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Linda McMahon.
Thank you. Good.
Well, you have quite an audience. Our turnout is a record turnout for you, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. I doubt that I'm the reason for the turnout, but I'm very happy to see all of these folks here who have such an incredible interest, in education, and it is the, I think, primary topic that we really do have to address.
Well, we're devoting all day to education, Madam Secretary. One of the things that President Trump did on his first actions was to sign an executive order that directs as many federal resources as possible towards education freedom. ALEC lawmakers have been at the forefront of those issues, and 17 states now have passed that universal education freedom, as we just heard in the panel before. Under your leadership, the department is also putting out guidance for states on how to use existing funding to stream and accomplish this. What guidance do you have for the lawmakers in the room, and I think you have about 450 of them, who are looking to enhance education and their freedom for parents and parental empowerment in the next legislative session?
Well, it's very interesting because lawmakers now, the states now can kind of put aside about 3% of their funding to allocate towards, school choice and charter schools, and I think that's so important. The president's main goal is to make quality education and access to a quality education for every child in America. He doesn't care. He's told me, he said, look, I don't care if kids have homeschool, I don't charter school, public school, private school, religious school. He said, let's just educate our kids, and let's have states where education is closest to the child. Let's have states be the ones who are enacting, their rules and their regulations. Let's have parents be at the center of that, because parents are with their children. They know what is best for their child, and they should have the choice to put their children in schools where they can flourish. No child should be a prisoner of a failing school. And so to be able to, thank you. And so as we look at the new legislation, I mean, well, and we've just allocated we're able to get past, another $60 million for school choice. So now we're up to $500 million. And that just makes such a big difference. And so for, to start, more charter schools. And I just think it's so important.
It seems to me that for you and for the president, this is personal. And both as incredibly successful entrepreneurs, you understand kind of the importance of education for our children and development into and kind of skill sets that can be successful. Do you think, one of the first things that the president did was have a cabinet meeting and brought in all the education leaders that you participated in. Why do you think it's so personal to him and for you?
Well, let me first speak for myself. And just on a very, very personal basis, I ran for the Senate in Connecticut in 2009, 2010. Then I ran again right after that. I think I'm happy now that I lost. I wasn't too happy then. But the reason I ran, and I said it, was because I really wanted the best for my grandchildren, and they were really small then. And I think that is a real impetus now for me and for the president as well. We're looking at that next group, that next generation. But when we look at education, and he and I had a conversation one day, and I said, Mr. President, I so appreciate your emphasis on education, because it's not just about educating our children, but if we look at education, it is one of the cornerstones of our country in terms of our growth, of our defense, and of making, continuing to make America, the #1 country in the world. And if we don't educate our children now, we're really going to lose this battle. Not only an economic battle, but a defensive battle, and everything that is really important to all of us. And so when I heard you in your opening remarks say that we want teachers that aren't teaching ideology, that we want teachers who are teaching the basics. They're really teaching courses. I mean, when we look at our NAEP scores, and we know, this group knows, they were just deplorable. We have to get those scores up. We have to educate our kids. We have to get back to the basics of, and my number one issue is literacy.
Yeah. You've been promoting evidence-based literacy. I mean, it's just been great, the messages coming out of the Department of Education. And as we know, only 1/3 of American students are proficient in reading by the time they're in 4th grade. I heard you talk about that at the White House, I think, just recently with the Missouri delegation. How does the department encourage teachers and states to improve those metrics through the science of reading?
The science of reading, one of the things that I say to the states, excuse me, and I'm not an education expert, first of all, and when the president asked me to take on this role, it's one of the things that I said to him is I said, look, I did get my certificate to teach when I graduated from college. I've served on the State Board of Education in Connecticut, and I've been on the Board of Trustees for a university, but I'm not an education expert. So when the science of reading came up to me, and I asked, I said, tell me what that's all about. And so as my people who are very smart in education explained to me, it is getting back to basics, phonetics, and having more one-on-one interaction with the students. And it's evidence-based. We see the results of it. We saw it in Mississippi.
I was going to ask you about the Mississippi miracle.
What a great segue. So, the miracle in Mississippi, where they came from almost at the bottom to about midway, which is a great jump for them.
Our former Speaker Gunn is right here. I just was talking
congratulations on that as well. So, what I've said to people who've asked me, what do I want to do? Because the president has asked me literally to shut down the Department of Education. So, what is the lasting effect that I would hope, maybe my legacy? if we wanted to form it that way. And I would like to think that we left making things better and stronger, as you mentioned in your opening remarks. But I also want to leave best practices that we can demonstrate to the states, and that we can provide toolkits to them. It's not a mandate. You don't have to do this. But this is what we found in other states. If you look at Mississippi, if you look what happened in Louisiana over the past year, how their scores, came up. We've seen it in Florida and Iowa and other states. In Tennessee, they've adopted best practices. And so let's look at all of them and continue to study them over the next, months and offer them to the states and say, look, these have been successful.
Yeah.
This is what research shows has worked. This is evidence-based because the data backs it up. And then help provide toolkits. And I think that's one of the most important things that we could do as we wind down the bureaucracy in Washington. We're not winding down education. We are lifting education. But we have to cut out the bureaucracy and the red tape and all the costs that go along with that.
Well,
thank you.
Absolutely, and it's so important for our legislators. I specifically didn't say we were shutting down the Department of Education. We're talking about this and trying to say, no, we're repurposing all the good parts and all the things, the necessary functions, and kind of shifting them to the different places once you get that all laid out, right?
And that's exactly the plan. However, I have a boss who says to me every time I see him, so how are we moving along with shutting down the Department of Education? But he means exactly what you have said and what I have said. He wants to, the teachers' unions, which you affectionately mentioned,
oh, so affectionately.
are insistent, that the president hates education, and he's getting rid of education. Well, it's the most far-fetched thing ever. He really just wants to make it the most excellent education system that can be in the world.
Well, absolutely. The panel before us was talking about kind of disrupting it in a way that kind of iron sharpens iron. This is not an attack on public schools. This is a way for public schools to get out of what they've been stuck in.
Absolutely.
Right? And we're trying to create an environment where public schools can be stronger and better and more effective at teaching our kids. And then at the same time, providing other options for kids. Who could possibly be against that? I don't understand it.
I heard Ms. Pringle, from NEA, was talking about, I think
Your
it was...
new best friend.
Yes, yesterday, she was just really on a rant and just accusing the president of fascism. And I'm going, I don't know, does she not understand? Fascism is more control, more... She was on a rant, so...
Yeah, incredible. The department...
keep correcting her.
Right. So we have a messaging challenge with our legislators to make sure that we're messaging this right, and I think that will help the secretary. We also, as it relates to this, the Department of Education, have a legislator letter that we plan to send to you with, I think we have about 150 signatures already. We plan to get a lot more across the entire country, and I know you'll see it out in our hallways. So if you're a legislator and you want to sign on, we'd love to have you sign on to that. Jonathan will be very happy with me for promoting that.
And by the way, just sorry for interrupting you, but I just have such an appreciation for all the work that ALEC does.
Thank you.
And I was talking to my chief of staff just a little before we came in, and she said often, and other roles that she has had, that they literally, when they were looking for legislation, they just could pull off from ALEC a lot of the work that you've done and offer it. So it is so meaningful, and this letter will be so helpful. So thank you for the work that gets done.
Yeah. We did, right when you and the president announced your plans for the Department of Education, we had an emergency education task force meeting and passed a resolution in support of your work there. Matt Hall, the Speaker of the House in Michigan, within 24 hours passed it. There's our Michigan delegation, but within 24 hours had passed it. So we would encourage all the states out there that are still in session and or can get this done to start building and passing that resolution, because when this starts happening in Congress and when these decisions start being made, the Secretary is going to need the help of the entire country, and that's all of you to get us over the finish line. You know, this is not the only thing that the Education Department is focused on, and one thing I'm just thrilled about, and was at the White House when you spoke, was the launch of the 250th anniversary. The history of our country, and I saw the partnership with PragerU and had been briefed on it by the White House, but hopefully as you walked in you saw all the PragerU banners, and if you see them, take a picture of you with them. But we've partnered with them to educate on the 56 signers of the Declaration and the bringing to life all of those signers. Tell me a little bit about what your plans are for the 250th anniversary, because that's a big celebration.
Well, it's ambitious.
Yes.
Very ambitious. And I love the folks that we have working, you know, in the Department of Education. Chase Forrester is leading that charge and just putting together an incredible program. One of the things that we're going to do is tour all 50 states called the Independence Trail. And there will be events in all 50 states in order that those states join the Union. And there'll be speeches about, you know, talking about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and our forefathers, and really building that patriotism, I think, across all, you know, 50 states. And that's one of the most ambitious things that we're going to do. And I'm told, Chase told me the other day, and that'll be in conjunction with another 50-state tour that you're doing on another program. I said, okay, Chase, we'll work all this in. And, but then the other thing that we're doing is the 1776 Presidential Award, and that we're going to conduct kind of like a contest. It will be a contest across the country. First it'll be states, then regions, and eventually the finalists will come to Washington. And this will be a contest that is explained to me that it will be kind of like a spelling bee, except that it will be on facts about forefathers, Constitution, and all of that. And in the winner in Washington can win up to like a $25,000 scholarship towards college. So, you know, we hope to get a lot of local media coverage, a lot of national media coverage for this, because I think it really will inspire, you know, a lot of students and get people really revved up, you know, about our 250th anniversary.
How can our state delegations partner with the Department of Education on that effort? Is there something they can do? Should they reach out to the Department of Education?
That's one way. You can reach out to the governors in their states and other legislators, but also with the Department of Education to see how that can mesh. I think legislators can probably work most effectively in their own state, so to see what the programs are there, but always feel free to reach out to us.
Wonderful. That's great. Tackling the cost of higher education.
Wow,
that's our
a big
next topic. It's very exciting. Higher education has become unaffordable. The business model it's not defensible, right?
I'd be out of business.
That's right. The one big, beautiful bill caps the amount of federal funds that can be loaned to a student for their schooling. How do you respond to those who have said that this will make colleges less affordable?
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it makes colleges less affordable. It will, I think, put downward pressure on colleges to reduce their tuition cost. You know, I think it's, if students can borrow up to the full amount of cost of attendance to college, what incentive is there for colleges to bring down any costs? So if we reduce the amount that they can borrow, it stands to reason that colleges are going to have to bring down their costs. I mean, to me, that seems like a very logical principle. I can't understand how it goes awry anywhere, but that is actually, I think, what the case will be.
As Arthur Laffer would say, it's not rocket surgery. Right? So accreditation and the landscape of accreditation, I've heard you speak about this as well, and I know that the President has signed an executive order to overhaul higher education and accreditation. Can you speak to how the department's regulatory changes are encouraging this kind of collaboration in the states on the accreditation process and the institutions there?
One of the things that I heard the most about when I first came on as Secretary of Education was accreditation. and what a monopoly it is. You know, 5 or 6 accreditors all over the country responsible for kind of giving the good housekeeping seal of approval for colleges and universities. And if you think about it, there's one accreditor for all law schools, you know, the ABA, right? and for all medical schools. Think about the power that that accreditor has, you know, to hold back their accreditation and to force policy then into colleges and universities. And what we have seen is a lot of DEI policy that was really trying to not tried, but was pushed through to colleges and universities. And so we wanted to make sure that we kind of bring this back to the drawing board. Let's talk about the responsibilities of accreditors. And we have, I think, 6 states that have gotten together, led by Governor DeSantis, all the 6 southern states. And they've just said they're forming a new accreditor. And it'll take a little while to get that in place. But, you know, we need more accreditors, but we also need to change all the regulations. So we're taking a hard look at all of that.
So,
and congratulations to Governor DeSantis and those 6 governors. And I think Sonny Perdue is on that. And I think it's South Carolina, North Carolina. I won't remember them all. But they've taken an action, and I applaud that. And we need to have more of that.
kind of a regional approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then just dismantling, we talked about the next phase of the Department of Education and what steps we have to take. What are your next steps with Congress with respect to this?
Well, if we step back a minute from Congress, what is kind of the next steps that I think, well, let me digress for a second. When I was in my confirmation hearing, and I was asked by some of the senators, and then in individual meetings I've had with senators, they will quickly remind me that in order to close down the Department of Education, that takes an act of Congress because it's statutorily established. And they will tell me that they are maybe reluctant at this point to provide that vote. So my response to them was, I really believe that the parts of the Department of Education that are now under that umbrella can be better, as you mentioned earlier, funneled through other agencies. I said, so let's take it piece by piece. Let's put programs in place. Let me prove to you how it can work better if we take, for instance, this section and put it through another agency. And by example, the Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez-DeRemer, and I have talked for a long time about so many parts that she believes of education that can be in labor. I mean, their whole responsibility is to develop, you know, a workforce.
Yeah.
And so she believes, as do I, that really starts K through 12 and then high school, because we need to be teaching, you know, skill-based, hands-on, as well as the liberal arts courses and all that we need to do. But we need to have that pathway all through school to get to a job, because ultimately we have to work to support our families. And so isn't it important to have that kind of focus? And I love some of the things. I was with Governor Braun earlier up at Purdue, talking about a lot of the things that have been going on in Indiana. And it's not just in Indiana, but it's foremost on my mind now because he and I were speaking about it. But, you know, about dual accreditation, dual credits, you know, from high school that can then go into college, reduces the cost of college, et cetera. So as Lori and I have talked about that, we decided to sign a memorandum of understanding or an interagency agreement that we can work together, and it's done in government all the time. We provide part of the financing. She has a lot of the people who are already working on a lot of these projects, and it's really going to make for a stronger workforce development, and then how does that impact education at the higher level. So when we get that on board and really make that work, I'm going to sit with different representatives and senators and say, here is how this is working. And so it'll be, I think, in chunks like that to show how this is moved. It's more economical. It's more efficient. We've taken away all this other regulation. And when you think about the fact there were 43 workforce development projects all going on simultaneously, imagine the redundancy and the cost of all of that. Okay, let's narrow it down. This is how it's going to work. It is really my goal to have such strong programs to say, how can you deny that this is the best way for this to work?
Right, that this isn't the path that we should
So
take.
it's proofs in the pudding. So,
How were we doing it before 1973 when we didn't have a Department of Education, right? It just stands to reason. I think, you know, in the introduction of the secretary, we talked about your business skills and the entrepreneurial skills and your way of running things, and you did it at the SBA. And hearing you talk about the MOU that you have with the Department of Labor and how you're going to collaborate and work together just makes me think this is, you know, this transition is in good hands. It's in the best hands possible. And just like I think the country is in the best hands, you are focused, you've got this collaboration with the cabinet. You know, I see these cabinet meetings and I can't remember when President Biden had a cabinet meeting. And certainly one that, you know, actually talked about collaboration and the cabinet level secretaries working together. So to hear you working with the Department of Labor and of course the Treasury and HHS for school programs and things like that, I'm sure that's probably part of it too.
Oh, it definitely is, and I've spent weeks and weeks now. Well, in fact, even when we were going through the transition period, sitting with Scott Bessent, who is now the Secretary of Treasury. At that point, he was a hopeful Secretary of Treasury, but we were actually talking about student loans. What can we do to improve the student loan, you know, program? How can Treasury work with us and actually take that over? Because I think that's where it belongs. The Department of Education should not be a bank. It isn't a bank. Let's have a bank do it. Makes more sense to me. Absolutely.
Well, we're out of time, but I have to tell you that it is just such an honor and a privilege to have you as our opening speaker for the ALEC 52nd annual meeting. And we appreciate all that you're doing. Give it up for the Secretary Linda McMahon.